In photography, there's one tool that often gets overlooked, and in many cases people say it should be avoided at all costs. I think I've even said it myself, but I want to find out if that belief still holds true, or if technology has improved enough that this tool might actually be a valuable addition to everybody's kit bag. We'll take a look at that later in the video, but for now I want to really immerse myself in the landscape. You know, we're at that time of year where the sun is very low and golden hour is stretched out and can last a few hours. So yeah, I'm really interested to see what compositions we can find today. So let's get into it. So one of my absolute favourite places today, not just for photography, but for relaxing, walking my dogs and just enjoying the unreal beauty of Pembrokeshire. It really is an absolutely special place, and I can't wait to get down to this little cove here. I've never shot down here, so I'm super excited to get down there and see what I can make. There's some amazing limestone formations down here in these really tranquil conditions. I've got a little bit of a scramble to get down there first, but yeah, it truly is a stunning location. It's not too bad. So it wouldn't be Pembrokeshire, would it, without getting a rain shower or two, but I'm really keeping my eyes peeled in case there's a rainbow or something like that out that way. So I definitely think there's a composition here somewhere, especially when the sea comes in a little bit more. I've got this wonderful rock coming down here, some water flows running through the bottom there, and also church rock at the back there. Obviously not quite as wide as this, but I definitely think that is a good option. So I think I found my first port of call just down here in this little corner of this cove here. There's some amazing little limestone craggy rocks that are jutting out of this pristine sand here, and I want to really make the most of that. The water's just swirling around them as well, so I think that could give me a few creative possibilities as well. So I'm being really careful here to make sure that I don't destroy the sand too much with my walking boots because there's nothing worse than finding a perfect composition and then realising that you've ruined it. Let's get down there and take a look. So I've got my shot set up here. I've gone for a vertical composition looking through this gap between these rocks. Now what I've decided to do is pretty much fill the frame with rocks, because right now the sky is very, very blue. There's not a lot of detail up there at all. So I really want to fill the frame with detail. Now what I'm doing is I've got a 6-stop filter on the front here, and that's giving me 1/3 of a second, and that's allowing me to slow my shutter speed down to about 1/3 of a second, which just shows a little bit of motion in the water as the water passes through these rocks I've got here in the foreground. I think that just helps to tie the image together. I've got my shutter release cable on here as well, just making sure I can get the timing just perfect. So yeah, here's a wave coming in now. Let's grab this one. So I've moved over to the other side of the beach to take a shot of the rock formation. You might just be able to see over my left shoulder Church Rock, which looks absolutely amazing from this little cove here, completely different to how it looks on the main beach. Now, I thought I'd give the forbidden photography tool a try, and that is this little fella here, the variable ND filter. Now, it's long been said that variable ND filters are a great videography tool, but they're not so well suited to photography. Now, if you're not familiar with what a variable ND filter is, basically it can adjust your exposure. So the further you rotate it, the lighter your exposure gets, or the darker your exposure gets, depending on which way, obviously, that you rotate it. I'm using one right now to film this little piece to camera. So I'll show you exactly what I do. If I rotate it, it gets brighter, and if I turn it the other way, my exposure gets darker. Now, for videography, that's fantastic because it allows you to maintain the correct shutter speed. So when you're filming, ideally you want your shutter speed to be twice your frame rate. So my frame rate is 24 frames per second. My shutter speed ideally wants to be around 50th of a second. And that just allows the correct amount of motion blur within your image. If the shutter speed is too quick, typically things that are moving become very, very choppy. So if you see my hand here, it's kind of very natural looking, whereas if the shutter speed was quicker, it looked all jittery, which is not ideal. Now, it's long been said that variable NDs don't work that well for photography, but technology moves forward, doesn't it? And I'm really interested to see if these new modern filters can actually do a job for us photographers as well. So let's go and take a look. Now, the variable ND filter I'm using today is the Nano X series by K&F CONCEPT, who are kindly sponsoring today's video. Now, if you're not familiar with K&F CONCEPT, they make a wide range of quality photography gear at prices that are really accessible to everybody. I've been using their equipment for years now, such as lens cloths, sensor swabs, cleaning kits, tripods and filters. They really do have just about everything a photographer might need. So this Nano X series ND filter is one of their high-end options. So the build quality and the optical quality is absolutely superb. But one of the things I really like about K&F is that they cater for everyone. So whether you're just starting out or working professionally, you can find something that fits the way that you shoot and within a budget that works for you as well. So if you're looking for a new photography accessory, I definitely recommend checking out K&F CONCEPT. The links down in the video description will take you to the website, and I'm sure you'll find some great options to fit your photography needs. And a big thank you again to K&F CONCEPT for supporting the channel and helping me to create videos such as this. So I've got my composition framed up, the variable ND filter is on, and I'm going for a bit of a minimalist composition here, just a zigzag through the rocks, and our focal point there is Church Rock, which just sits in the bay, which is absolutely amazing. Ideally what I'd like is just a little bit of cloud detail above it and some light just on that, so it really illuminates the rock and makes it the sort of focal point of the image, but we'll see if that happens. I'm not sure it will. But anyway, I'm going to go and take the photo so we can exactly see what the variable ND filter is doing. So without the variable ND filter, to get my exposure right, I'm looking at an exposure of around about 50th of a second. Now if I rotate this fully right round to ND 32, which is 5 stops, I'm getting somewhere around about a quarter of a second, something like that. So it's reducing that light through the lens. And I've got this framed up at about 35 mils, so what's that, roughly around 50 mils, something like that if you're on full frame. So yeah, I'm not seeing any cross polarization or anything like that, and the image quality is looking pretty good too. So I'm going to go and take this shot now and wait it out a bit longer and see if anything else happens. I'd love to get some light on the rock there. So I've moved over to a different spot here, which has given me a bit of a different perspective on the coastline, and it's really opened up the view. It's a little bit more expansive now, and I found this seaweed down here in the foreground, which I really like. And what I wanted to do was test out the variable ND filter at a wider focal length. So I've put the 16 to 50 lens on, and I'm fully zoomed out at 16 millimeters. So that's really allowing me to see how it performs at a wider focal length. And that's typically where you're probably going to have most of your problems with a variable ND filter for photography anyway, especially on a blue sky day like today. Now, I am on an APS-C camera, which means 16 millimeters is about 24 millimeters. And I'm not really seeing any darker edges in my frame, which is actually quite surprising. Maybe the left-hand side of the frame is a little bit darker, but actually I think that's probably the case when I'm looking at it here. So yeah, I think it's pretty natural looking actually. And I've got my shutter release cable. I'm just taking a few shots as we talk right now, because as the waves wash through, it really does change the whole perspective of the scene. And every now and again you get a set coming through like now where they wash right up to the pretty much to the tripod here, which is absolutely fantastic. Would have been lovely to get some clouds in the sky. It is forecast for this evening, but nothing major as yet. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see what this comes out like. Please do let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think this variable ND filter is doing a really good job? Certainly looks the case on the back of the camera here. And we're getting some light. Oh my word, we're getting some light. So I think I'm going to head to a different location. I feel like I've exhausted the opportunities in this little bay right now, especially with no detail in the clouds. What I'm hoping is if I move around to the main beach, maybe take a look in the sand dunes there, I'll be able to point back towards the west coast, and maybe there might be some detail in the sky looking back that way at sunset. That's my plan anyway. Who knows what will happen? There's only one way to find out, isn't there? So let's get stuck into it. So as mentioned, I was going to head back to the main beach, but then I just thought I'd check out this little corner again where I was shooting earlier, because now the tide's just that little bit lower. It's just allowing me to get a bit further into the corner and look through that gully. And Church Rock is now perfectly lit by the sun, which is absolutely amazing. And I've just framed this shot up so it's perfectly positioned in between this gully here, and I'm just letting this water wash over my foreground. Now, the good thing about having the variable ND filter on in this situation is I'm able to fine tune my exposure just perfectly. So I need f8 for my depth of field, and I can get 1/4 of a second, which just shows enough motion blur without losing too much texture and detail. I've got soaking wet feet in the water itself, so it's really allowing me to get the perfect exposure, the perfect shutter speed for this composition. So in this instance, I think it's absolutely perfect. I'm just keeping my eye on this water here. The tide's turning now, and I've already got a wet leg. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. So there are a few pros and cons, aren't there, to using variable ND filters. So let's start with the pros first. I think, number one is they're fast and flexible, aren't they? They're easy to control. So instead of swapping out fixed ND filters, you can simply rotate the ring and adjust your exposure in seconds, which is great for, I guess, changing lighting conditions. Also, you're carrying less gear as well, aren't you? If you're just carrying one variable ND filter, you're not having to carry multiple fixed ND filters. And also, I think they're ideal for run and gun style of shooting. And also, if you do video as well, you potentially could leave the filter fixed onto the front of your lens, capturing video, and also for your stills as well. So they're quite versatile. So I guess a few of the cons would be composition choices can be a little bit challenging sometimes, because I would say using a variable ND filter on an ultra wide lens can cause polarization problems as well. You might end up getting darker corners. And the wider that focal length is, the worse sometimes that can actually be. So it might, hinder your compositional choices. And like I mentioned earlier, the cheaper a variable ND filter is, the worse they are often. You can get softness, contrast problems, and obviously, like we mentioned as well, that polarization where you get that X pattern is definitely more evident in the cheaper filters. Well, I've made it to the dunes, and there's beautiful light hitting the cliff edges here, and some pines at the top there. There's a lovely splash of light just coming over the hill. I'll show you. Beautiful light coming over here and hitting the edges of these cliff faces. Some lovely dramatic clouds over that way as well, but I'm not sure it makes a photograph. I'm going to continue to look. But that light is fading very, very fast. So my chances are looking pretty slim right now. I think it's been one of those days where the clouds just haven't been playing ball. Right, the light on the side of these cliffs is beautiful. So I've come down to the shoreline, and I'm really glad I did, because I was in two minds whether to pack up or not. I was really struggling on the dunes back there, but I thought, yeah, give it a go down to the shoreline, see what happens. And this cloud has drifted across, which is pretty cool. And there's also some really nice peachy tones on the horizon. And where I am, I'm probably about 15-20 yards back from the shoreline, and I'm seeing some of those peachy tones being reflected in the wet sand here, which I think is really nice. So I'm going for a pretty simple composition, really focusing on these flows of water that run past my tripod here, and these cloud formations that drift through the composition. No need for any filters or anything like that. Pretty simple framing, f8, 30th of a second. So I'm going to go ahead, take this shot now, focus on the horizon, and then I'll share a few thoughts about the variable ND and what I've learned from today's shoot. So I'm glad I came down to the shoreline. That was a beautiful sunset, really nice. Really struggled to, I think, find a really good composition, but it was great just to come down to the shoreline, get the wide angle lens out and see if I could make some interesting compositions with the clouds and the reflections. I think that was pretty cool, and I definitely think it was a nice end to the photography today. Now, in terms of the variable ND filter, where do I sit with it? Well, I've always got one in my bag for videography, so whenever I'm out here filming these videos, I've always got a variable ND with me just to help me get my correct shutter speed, like I mentioned before. So I've always got one in my bag. Could it replace my solid ND filters? I don't think it could, because with their solid ND filter, you can use them on pretty much any type of lens. So you can use it on an ultra wide, you can use it on telephoto, you can use it on anything pretty much. Now, with the variable ND, you do start to see some dark corners when you put it on the ultra wide lens. I've even tried it on my ultra wide, and I actually get some vignetting around the corners because it is really, really wide. So I can't actually use it on my super wide lens. So that's something to think about. So I think if I was maybe going out for the day on a long hike and I really needed to keep the weight down and I didn't want to take my pack of solid ND filters with me, I think I'd be happy to take the variable ND filter, knowing that I'd probably just be able to use that on my standard zoom lens and my telephoto lens, and maybe not bother with the wide angle. So that's kind of how I sit with it. It's a really, really valuable tool to have. It's not perfect for every situation for photography, but I do think it's definitely something that is a worthwhile consideration, especially if you don't use an ultra wide lens. So I do hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you did, you might like the one that's at the top here, and on the other side is a link to my landscape photography tours. I'm always updating that as well, so there's new tours being put on all of the time. So should you wish to join up with myself and Henry for a landscape photography adventure over multiple days, be sure to go and check out that link, and there's also plenty of details in the description below about that as well. Anyway, until next week, take care.